Two raised beds, same soil, same seeds, same water schedule, same sunlight. One row of roses blooms dark green and full, stems thick as a finger, leaves catching light like polished wax. The other row looks exhausted, leaves pale yellow-green, veins still dark, as if the plant is trying to say something but cannot find the words. You check the pH, normal. You add more compost, nothing changes. You buy a bottle of chelated iron from the garden center, $18, a chemical compound designed to be absorbed fast and disappear faster. 2 weeks later, the same pale color returns. But 30 meters away, in the corner of an old orchard, a man in his 70s has been pushing rusty nails into the soil around his lemon trees every spring since he was a child. His lemons are the size of small oranges. His leaves are a shade of green that looks almost aggressive. He never heard the word chelated. He never bought a bottle of anything. What does he understand that the fertilizer industry has trained you to forget? The symptom has a name: intervenal chlorosis. The leaves turn yellow, but the veins stay green. It is a specific pattern, not a general yellowing from nitrogen deficiency, not a pale wash from overwatering. This pattern means one thing almost universally: the plant cannot access iron. And here is the belief that needs to be broken. Most gardeners assume this means the soil lacks iron, so they add iron, and nothing happens, or it works briefly, then stops. The truth is almost always different. Iron is one of the most abundant elements on Earth. Your garden soil almost certainly contains more iron than your roses will ever need. The problem is not supply. The problem is availability. Iron exists in two oxidation states in soil. Fe3+, ferric iron, is the form that dominates in neutral to alkaline soils. It is insoluble. Roots cannot absorb it. Fe2+, ferrous iron, samar, is soluble, mobile, and directly usable by plant roots. The conversion between these two states is controlled by soil pH, microbial activity, and the chemistry of the root zone. In soils above pH 6.5, ferric iron dominates. In soils above pH 7.0, iron availability drops by a factor of 1,000 for every unit increase in pH. This is not a slight constraint. This is a wall. Plants that are most sensitive to this wall include roses, citrus, blueberries, azaleas, gardenias, and raspberries, all acid-preferring species that evolved in environments where organic matter decomposition kept the soil pH between 5.5 and 6.5. The iron is there. The soil is full of it. The plant is starving in abundance. What needs to change is not the quantity of iron, but the chemistry that unlocks it. A soil at pH 6.0 can deliver iron to plant roots at concentrations between 10 and 50 micromoles per liter in the soil solution. At pH 7.0, that concentration drops below 0.01 micromoles per liter, a 1,000-fold reduction. The plant begins showing chlorosis when its internal iron concentration falls below approximately 50 milligrams per kilogram of dry leaf tissue. The fertilizer industry's answer to this is chelated iron, iron wrapped in an organic molecule that keeps it soluble regardless of pH. It works for about 2 to 6 weeks. Then the chelate breaks down, the iron returns to ferric form, and the yellowing returns. You buy another bottle. The global iron chelate fertilizer market was valued at approximately $920 million in 2023 and is projected to exceed $1.4 billion by 2030, growing at roughly 6% annually. This is a product category that exists almost entirely because of one soil chemistry problem: alkaline pH reducing iron availability, and one industry answer: synthetic chelation. A standard bottle of chelated iron EDTA for home gardens costs between $12 and $22 for 500 grams. For a medium garden with 10 to 15 sensitive plants, you may need to apply 2 to 3 times per season. Annual cost: $30 to $70 per garden every year, indefinitely. The method you are about to see costs approximately $0 to $2 total. It uses materials that are either free or available at any hardware store. It does not require repeat purchases. It works with the existing chemistry of your soil rather than patching over it temporarily. The gap is not 10x cheaper. It is not 50x cheaper. In most cases, For a home gardener, it is functionally free versus $40 to $70 per year. And the mechanism is not a workaround. It is not a folk trick. It is applied electrochemistry and microbial soil science. The same principles used by soil scientists in university field trials since the 1940s. The industry does not suppress this information. It simply has no incentive to distribute it. There is no revenue in rusty nails. In the agricultural literature of the 1930s and 1940s, iron deficiency in orchard crops was a well-documented problem in calcareous soils. Soils derived from limestone with naturally high pH. Citrus growers in Spain, California, and North Africa were losing significant yield percentages to chlorosis, sometimes 20 to 35% reduction in fruit size and count. The standard intervention at the time was soil acidification, applying sulfur, pine needle mulch, or fermented organic material to bring pH below 6.5. In regions where water quality was alkaline and realkalization happened quickly, more permanent solutions were explored. Iron filings, iron scraps, and oxidized iron objects were being incorporated into orchard soils across Mediterranean farming communities, well before the term chelation entered agricultural chemistry. Farmers in Catalonia and Provence recorded the practice in regional agricultural manuals from the early 20th century. In Japan, iron-rich agricultural byproducts from blacksmithing villages were historically traded to rice farmers for soil amendment. The formal academic study of iron sulfate and metallic iron soil amendment appeared in peer-reviewed journals in the early 1950s. Researchers at the University of California, Davis, and the USDA Bureau of Plant Industry documented that metallic iron, when oxidized in soil, releases ferrous ions through a sequence of electrochemical and microbial reactions. The key studies noted that the rate of release was slow, sustained, and pH buffered by the organic acids produced by soil bacteria during the oxidation process. This research did not disappear. It was absorbed into the academic record and quietly superseded by the commercial development of editosylates, which were faster acting, easier to package, and, critically, repeatable. A solution you bury once and forget is not a product. A bottle you buy 3 times a season is. The farmers who kept using iron scraps were not primitive. They were operating on a longer time horizon. When a piece of oxidized iron, a rusty nail, an iron filing, a piece of old rebar, is placed in moist, biologically active soil, a cascade of reactions begins. Understanding this cascade is what separates a method that works from superstition. Electrochemical dissolution. Rust is primarily iron 3 oxide, Fe2O3. In the presence of water and organic acids in soil, this compound undergoes partial dissolution. The rate is slow. A standard 65 mm iron nail with moderate rust surface will release measurable iron ions over a period of 4 to 16 weeks, depending on soil moisture, temperature, and organic acid concentration. This slow release is not a limitation. It is the mechanism's greatest advantage. Microbial iron reduction. Soil contains a class of bacteria known as iron-reducing bacteria, species including Geobacter and Shewanella, that use ferric iron as a terminal electron acceptor in anaerobic or microanaerobic microsites around decomposing organic matter. These bacteria convert Fe3+ directly to Fe2+ as a metabolic byproduct. In soils with adequate organic carbon, this microbial reduction can produce ferrous iron concentrations in the rhizosphere between 0.1 and 2.0 millimoles per liter, orders of magnitude above the threshold for plant uptake. Root exudate chemistry. Iron-deficient roots actively modify their chemical environment. They release compounds called phytosiderophores, small organic molecules that bind ferric iron and carry it into the root. They also acidify the rhizosphere by secreting protons, lowering local pH by 0.5 to 2.0 units immediately around the root surface. This local acidification converts some Fe3+ to Fe2+ without external help. When a slow-releasing iron source is present near these roots, the two systems, root chemistry and iron dissolution, amplify each other. The buffering effect. Unlike soluble chelated iron products, which spike soil solution iron concentration quickly and then drop to zero, metallic iron in soil provides a sustained, buffered release. Studies on iron amendment in orchard soils have shown that soil ferrous iron concentrations remain elevated for periods of 8 to 24 weeks following a single application of iron scraps. The release rate self-regulates. Wetter conditions accelerate oxidation. Drier conditions slow it. The plant does not receive a flood followed by a drought. It receives a steady, low-level supply calibrated to soil conditions. In documented trials on chlorotic citrus, sinensis, and alkaline soils, iron scrap amendments produced measurable reductions in intervenal chlorosis within 3 to 5 weeks, with full recovery of normal leaf color by week 8 to 12. Leaf iron concentrations increased from deficiency levels below 50 milliniconarc to adequate levels between 80 and 150 mango dry weight. No synthetic chelate was involved. The mechanism is old physics and older biology, working in the same direction. Materials 8 to 12 iron nails or screws, heavily rusted, not galvanized. Zinc coating interferes with the process. Standard 65 mm to 100 mm construction nails work well. Cost $0 to $2 at any hardware store or salvage. Optional, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar or diluted citric acid solution, 1 teaspoon per liter of water, to accelerate initial surface oxidation if nails are not yet rusted. Optional, a cup of finished compost or worm castings to place near the nails at the time of insertion, providing organic carbon for iron-reducing bacteria. Preparation. If nails are not already rusted, leave them in a jar of water with a tablespoon of vinegar for 5 to 7 days before use. Surface oxidation, the beginning of rust, will be visible within 48 hours. You are creating the Fe2O3 surface layer that will dissolve slowly in the soil. Placement. Insert nails vertically into the soil within the drip line of the affected plant, the circle on the ground directly below the outermost edge of the canopy. This is the zone of highest root density for most trees and shrubs. For a standard rose bush, 4 nails, spaced evenly in a 30 cm radius around the base stem. Push each nail 10 to 15 cm into the soil. Do not push them to full depth. The upper third should remain in the moist topsoil layer where biological activity is highest. For a citrus or lemon tree, 8 to 12 nails distributed within the drip line. Space them 40 to 60 centimeters apart. Depth, 15 to 20 centimeters. After placement, water the area thoroughly. Wet soil accelerates the electrochemical dissolution. If you are adding compost, apply it as a 3 to 5 centimeter layer over the insertion zone. The compost will feed iron-reducing bacteria and also acidify the topsoil slightly as it continues to decompose. Do not disturb the nails for at least 6 weeks. The mechanism requires time. You are not feeding the plant directly. You are changing the chemistry of the root environment. Why each step matters. The drip line placement targets the densest root zone, where iron uptake is most active. The partial depth keeps the nail in the most biologically active soil layer. The compost addition fuels the microbial community that converts Fe3+ to Fe2+. The water triggers dissolution. These are not arbitrary instructions. Each one has a physical reason. Total cost, $0 to $2. One application lasts 1 full growing season. This method has real constraints, and understanding them is as important as understanding the mechanism. It will not work in highly alkaline soils without pH correction. If your soil pH is above 7.8, common in regions with hard water irrigation or heavy limestone subsoil, the dissolution rate of ferrous iron may be insufficient to overcome the precipitation rate. In these conditions, a concurrent application of elemental sulfur, 50 to 100 grams per square meter, to gradually lower pH will substantially improve results. Without pH correction, you may see partial improvement, but not full recovery. It is slow. This is not a rescue treatment. If a plant is in acute iron deficiency, with more than 60% of leaves chlorotic and new growth severely affected, an immediate application of dilute iron sulfate solution, ferrous sulfate, 2 grams per liter of water, applied as a drench, will provide faster relief while the nail method establishes its slow-release system. Think of the nails as long-term infrastructure, not emergency medicine. It does not work for very large trees. A mature olive or avocado tree with a canopy spread of 6 to 8 meters requires iron delivery across a root zone that cannot be adequately serviced by 12 nails. At that scale, soil pH correction with sulfur amendments and compost incorporation is a more appropriate approach. Galvanized nails will cause harm. Zinc coating suppresses iron-reducing bacteria and introduces zinc ions that can be toxic at elevated concentrations. Use only plain steel or cast iron. Rust is not a contaminant, it is the product. When to apply, early spring, before new growth begins, is the optimal window. This allows the iron dissolution process to establish before the peak photosynthesis demand of summer. A secondary application can be made in early autumn for perennial plants. For roses and small shrubs, insert 4 to 6 nails in late winter or early spring. Water in well. Apply a 4-centimeter layer of acidic mulch, pine bark or pine needle mulch, over the root zone to maintain moisture and slowly lower surface pH. Week 1 to 2, no visible change. Dissolution is beginning at the nail surface. Microbial communities around the nail are shifting toward iron-reducing activity. Week 3 to 5, in optimal conditions, moist soil, temperatures above 15 degrees C, adequate organic matter. New leaves emerging during this period will begin to show improved color. Existing chlorotic leaves will not recover. Chloroplasts in yellow tissue are already degraded. Watch the new growth. Week 6 to 10. New growth should be visibly greener than pretreatment leaves. Leaf iron concentrations are typically approaching adequate range by week 8 in soils at pH 6.5 to 7.2. Week 12 and beyond. Full canopy recovery for roses and citrus in suitable soil conditions. The nails are still slowly releasing. A single application in spring will typically sustain adequate iron availability through the full growing season. Visual confirmation signals. New leaves emerging with normal green color while older leaves remain yellow. The system is working. The plant is recovering from the growing tip down. Uniform greening of all foliage simultaneously. This suggests a pH shift as the primary driver, often from accompanying compost or mulch acidification. No improvement after 10 weeks. Check soil pH. If above 7.5, add elemental sulfur and repeat. Do not remove the nails. Leave them in the soil indefinitely. As they continue to oxidize and eventually fragment, they become a slow-release iron reservoir integrated into the soil profile. Replacement may be needed after 2 to 3 growing seasons if chlorosis returns. There is a pattern that runs through nearly every problem in modern horticulture. The soil has what the plant needs. The problem is access, a lock between the element and the root, created by pH, by compaction, by the absence of the right microbial community, by the disruption of the electrochemical gradients that living soil maintains continuously. The fertilizer industry's answer to every lock is a new key sold in a bottle. And the keys work. They work quickly, visibly, and reliably, for a window of time. Then the lock returns. You buy another key. The dependency is not manufactured by deception. It is manufactured by the logic of a system optimized for transaction, not for soil health. A rusty nail in the ground is not a trick. It is a slow machine. It converts accumulated iron oxide into plant-available ions over months, powered by microbial metabolism and the electrochemical potential of moist soil. It works because the soil wants it to work, because the bacteria that reduce iron are already there, waiting for a substrate, and the roots that need iron are already there, acidifying their immediate environment, reaching. The nail meets the root halfway. What changes when you understand this is not your garden alone? It is your relationship with the space between the surface and the bedrock, the invisible layer of chemistry, biology, and physics that has been feeding plants since before any of our categories existed. You do not need to purchase access to that layer. You need to understand it. You just need to understand the invisible layer.